Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Well, hello. Welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore, and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas, and we are excited to jump into yet another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. But before we do that, we want to just do a few reminders. So number one, if you have not been a part of our Facebook group yet, you should be a part of the Facebook group. And that Facebook group is free to join, and it's called the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. So just type that into the Facebook search bar, press enter, and you'll find it. Free to join. Awesome community there. It's growing. And we would love to see you there for you to, ask questions, plug in, be part of that community, all that good stuff. And then also, we also just love to give a special shout out to our every weekers. So you know who you are. If you've been listening every week, you already know what's coming because you know exactly who you are and what that means for you who are new to the show or who are just plugging in for the first time in a long time. Those are the people who listen to this show every single week. And we just really appreciate you guys. You guys are what actually keeps this show going, whether you know it or not. You may feel like you're doing a small part by just listening to us, but it's actually very much appreciated, and it's a big part of what we do. So we really appreciate you there. And with all that being said, Maria, how you doing?
Yes, I'm doing really well, with the exception of a little bit of allergies right now. So if I wink at you kind of funny a few times, that's why.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
I hear you. Yeah, my whole family has the flu. So I'm the only survivor.
Oh no.
So,
it seems like you guys have gotten hit a little extra hard this season.
Yes. Yeah. The last I think the last like 6 or 7 weeks, I have been sleeping on the couch for about 4 of those weeks.
No.
So it's been difficult, but I'm
totally
totally okay doing that.
To earn it.
Yeah, I know. But I'm okay with it because if there's one thing that I hate, it's being sick. So, it's just one of those things. But yeah, I hope you're feeling better soon, and hopefully nothing crazy comes out like that. But
no, I hope not. It's usually just, we're in Arizona, everything's in bloom right now. And so it's just that time of year, but you kind of forget about it until the symptoms kick in. You're like, oh, I forgot. So anyway, now we're dealing with it, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, someday we should talk about that. Some of the things that get in our way of doing the things that we know we want to do. But not today. Let's not talk about that today.
Yeah.
I would like to talk today, if you're okay with this, about having a healthy financial business. And a business that's financially healthy, I think is probably a better way to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general, to make sure that we know what money's coming in, what money's going out, and to really try to make sure that we are profitable, because it's what keeps us healthy in our business. So I would like to talk to you about that, if that is okay with you. And I think we could probably have some really interesting conversation around some of the things that we find out.
Let's do it.
Okay, very
Game
good.
on.
All right. So we have talked on this show before about the whole idea of profit first, and we're not going to focus too much on that today specifically, but we do know that it's important to basically build profit into your business right at the get-go. And a lot of people look at this as like their top dollar no matter what. And I liken it sometimes to the tithe for the Christian who says, no matter what, I want to make sure that I'm giving money to my church, and that's just going to come off the top. And then I just play with whatever else is left. With your business, when we're talking about doing your profit and building it in at the beginning, that's kind of what this looks like. It's like we're just going to make sure that it's there rather than saying how much is coming in minus how much is going out. The difference is our profit. We're going to say, we're just going to write it in as a top line item right at the get-go. And then we play, if you will, with the rest of the money that's there. So that was something that when I went to a friend's house the other day and tried to help them with some of their stuff, that really resonated with them in terms of, oh, okay, so I can actually just write it in right away. So that's one of the things that I think is going to be super important.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the tithe. Even though it's like totally not connected in a
Right.
way, I guess, right? Like, but the idea is the same. Because one thing so I tithe personally with like my personal finances, and one thing that I remember from when I went from not tithing to then getting to tithing is I thought, I don't know if I'll even be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I did it, I realized not only can I do it, but I'm actually very comfortable doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize like you don't realize how much you actually have available to you and what you can, make do with until you actually do something like that. So I love the connection there and how it can tie into the business as well.
Yeah. And so I was helping somebody the other day with that, and that came up because that's something that they can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just do want to clarify that when we talk about a tithe, oftentimes, I mean, that technically means 10%. When we're talking
Yes.
about profit, we don't have to put a 10% on there. That number does not have to be the same. It could be 5%. It could be 1%. It could be really anything in between. It could be 25% if that's how you want to run your business. But what we really want to make sure that we do is create new money habits, right? That's kind of what we're all about. So we want to make sure that you choose a percentage that is doable for you to continue consistently through. So with this particular couple, they were utilizing like the majority of the money they were making, they were needing at that as income to put back into their family lives. And so we just started with 1% because that was something that they felt they could actually do and be consistent with and maintain. So we'd rather start small and then be able to build that up than start with like 8% and then feel like, oh, now we got to bring that back down to 4, that kind of thing. So as you're choosing that percentage, just kind of keep that piece in mind because that's going to be important moving forward. But one of the things I noticed when I was talking to them, Cody, and this is something I know we've alluded to on here before, but I don't know, it just never ceases to amaze me. So many of the concepts that we talk about just between you and I, and then even with other coaches, seem to become simplistic, or I don't want to say common sense, but common knowledge, I think. And when I'm out there sharing it with other people, even people who are in business, have been in business for a while, it's shocking sometimes to realize that this information really is not common for a lot of people. And the things that I think I'm almost like underplaying, like, oh, gee, I hope that I helped them enough with this thing. I'll walk out of a short session and they're like sending me text messages later on. Like, my mind is blown. I had no idea that I was going to get all of this value. I thought I was just going to get a little bit of advice. And now it's like this whole system is laid out in front of me. So I'm just wondering how often that happens to you as well.
Yeah. So you're talking about like when you first start this new system, you're like kind of mind blown as to what kind of happens. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and in full disclosure, this person is somebody. She's a friend, but we're not super close. If that makes any sense. Like she's not a client. So this is actually someone that is the wife of a coach for one of my daughters, and so they have this small business, and we were kind of just having coffee outside of the practice that they were at, and she mentioned something about her business, and I'm like, oh, I have a tool that I think could really help you. And she said, okay, well, I really appreciate that. Like, I can pay you for it. I said, you know what? That's not really what this is about. I'm actually wanting to provide this to you today. And so we set up a time for me to go over to her house. I went over there. And I think because it was something that was free and it was something that, I kind of played up as no big deal. She had an expectation of just hearing a couple of things here and there. but I was willing to give her a full hour, and I sat down and I showed her the things that I had, and I just I gave her more information than I would ever do in an actual coaching session. And I just say that out loud because even she said, "Is this what you do on the side?" I said, "Well," I said, "if this was an actually coaching session, I probably would have asked a lot more questions, drawn a lot more out of you rather than just kind of give it to you." But she really, really appreciated all of the stuff that she got. So that's just full disclosure for you. So you are like, it wasn't just giving her a little bit of information, but I also have not met with her for like 6 months and given her an entire system. It was a 3,000-foot overview of what this looks like. I gave her the tools that I've created for it and helped her to set those up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that like when people are introduced to something new, it's like, you're right. Like it can be like, oh my gosh, like the skies are parting and like, all this kind of stuff. Like it's all coming to me kind of thing, which is great. But I think that what's really important is that people actually follow through with it,
Yeah.
Which maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But that's one thing that I've just found is like, it's great once like the concept of things is great, but you have to actually put it into action. You have to actually like execute it. And then usually, not all the time, but usually if you do that, you can actually start to feel those effects. And when those effects start to happen, it's almost like a breath of fresh air, and it's, you ever have those moments to where like you do something new and it works really well. And then you're just like, why didn't I do this sooner? Or like, why didn't I think about this? Like, I'm so, maybe even like the idea of like, I'm so dumb. Like I should have known this kind of thing, right? Or like, I should have been doing this for a long time. But the fact of the matter is that like, it's not that we're dumb. It's just that we never really thought about it,
Right.
And then maybe if we did think about it, we never actually put it into action. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of validity to that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And, we're going through right now just a whole thing with my little girl. She has some developmental delays, and there are so many things. As you were talking, I was like, the person who I just did the screening with, I mean, the things that she has her doing is like army crawling and regular crawling and, eye tracking and that kind of stuff. And it's stuff that I'm sure she's going, well, this is just mundane, little things that people would already get. But I have those aha moments of, oh yeah, I know she didn't crawl when she was a baby. And you hear that those are really important things, but you don't sit down. I didn't sit down and make her so she skipped crawling, went straight to walking. So once she walked, she had no desire to crawl. And I didn't sit down and say, no, we're going to crawl for 15 minutes every day. Because that just seemed like a weird thing for a parent to do. But I am having those moments like, oh yeah, like now that she's as old as she is, that's one of the things we're going to get to do is crawl for 5 minutes a day. Yay. So maybe my brain will get all fixed up too. We'll see. We'll see how my memory is after all of this, if I'm doing this stuff with her. But no, you're absolutely right. When there's new information, it is an epiphany for us. And so I bring all of this up for our listeners because I know no matter how many times I hear it or I experience it, it's very easy to forget. That is my point. And so when we're sitting knee to knee with somebody, we have to remember that sometimes if it's the first time they've heard this stuff, then we have to treat it as if it's the first time that we're saying it, or, that we know it's their first time.
Yep, definitely. So one thing that's been going through my head is, and I feel like I know the answer to this, but I think that there's probably listeners who are thinking this as well, which is, hey, all this talk about profit, we hear this word thrown around all the time. We know that it's something that's good and something that we should be wanting and should be doing, but how does it all work? Like, what's the purpose of it? Like, why can't we just take all that money home instead? Like what exactly is profit? What's the benefits of setting stuff aside and all that kind of stuff? And how do we do it as well? So I'm going to let you have your soapbox moment and and fill us in on your wisdom here.
I'm sure our listeners really appreciate that. I think what you're asking is what's the difference between that and say owner's compensation? Like, why
Sure.
not just take it all home in
Mhm.
that or spend it in other ways? So
Yep.
I think one of the biggest differences is that profit itself is kind of built in for the owners of the company. So if you are a solopreneur, you're technically the only owner. But if you think about your company kind of like a publicly owned company, there are stockholders even in your solopreneur business, there are stockholders. In my family, that becomes my husband and my 4 children who have to make certain sacrifices in order for me to take the time to sit and make these podcasts or to go and coach or to have the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So
Mhm.
those become the stockholders in your business. And comes down to a motivational thing. Humans need motivation. And I know that's not one of Cody's favorite words. We've gone on that soapbox
Mhm.
before, but it is true that we do need some sense of motivation or incentive to keep on going when things get difficult. So for our kids and for our spouses, a lot of times it's like, well, why do you do what you do? And you have a pretty strong why, but that might not be enough for them. So they like those extra little incentives. So you might carry a paycheck home every couple weeks, every month, however you have that set up. That's just for your living. You basically bring that into your paychecks, or excuse me, into your financial budget, just like you would any other paycheck from any other employer. The profit is different. The profit is more celebratory. It's smaller oftentimes than what your pay is, and it is more specific. It's based on a percentage, so is your pay oftentimes. But this is incremental. I think I said more specific, but I meant it's more incremental. So it's actually building every couple of weeks. You're putting aside, should we just go with 5%? It's halfway between the 1 and the 10. So
Sure.
let's just say you're putting aside 5% of every dollar that you have coming into your business. So it's the top line. You take 5% of that and you're putting it aside for profit. And then every quarter, as it has built, that's when you look at that and you say, okay, now I've got, let's say, $1,000 sitting in this profit account. I'm going to take half of it. You're only taking out half. And you're going to celebrate with that. You're going to have fun with it. You're not going to put it towards your debt unless that is something that is actually fun for your family in the moment. But you're going to take that and you're going to allow your stockholders, if you will, enjoy that with you. So that becomes an incentive for them. And it becomes that added push for you to actually continue to do what you're doing. The other half, you actually let build up there, and eventually that becomes your peace of mind fund for your business. So that's kind of cool too. You're not gonna touch that other half, except one thing that's different. Like you go to the next. Okay, so let's do this mathematically real quick. You did $1,000. You're taking away 500, so now you have 500 left. Let's just
Mhm.
say you have the next quarter is exactly the same, so you're going to be adding in another $1,000. So now, how much will you have, Cody?
15.
1,500. So how much will you take out?
750.
Very good. Yes. So instead of taking out 500 that time, you actually are also taking out half of what was left over before. So you're going to be taking out 750 and now you have $750 left there. So what's really exciting about that is as you see that grow and your kids see that grow and your spouse sees that grow, they're like, "Oh, good job, honey. You are really making this work." And it reminds you of why you were continuing to do this. It kind of keeps those wheels greased, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say that if you are able to grow your practice to a certain level, and also you do this for an extended period of time, those quote unquote like quarterly bonuses that you end up bringing home, they can become pretty sizable.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
sizable.
And so
Especially if
does the leftover money. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was
Finish
going
with
to
the
say,
word.
especially depending on how much you're actually contributing to your profit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like me personally, I do 15% to my
Mm-hmm.
profit.
Mm-hmm.
So those quarterly bonuses, I look forward to them, and so does
Mm-hmm.
my family as
I'm
well.
sure. Yeah.
So,
So, just one quick note, part of having a financially successful and healthy business is to have that peace of mind fund in place. And so I just
mhm.
want to just reiterate that as you build that, you want to just have at least go up to that 3 to 6 months of business expenses for yourself. And the whole idea there is very similar to what it would be in your personal finance. You want to have enough of a cushion where if you didn't have any clients, you didn't have any income, you would have enough to cover what you needed for that 3 to 6 months. So in your case, if you're taking a certain percentage out for your paycheck, but it's not percentage, it's actually a dollar amount, and you're relying on that, you want to make sure you have at least 3 to 6 months of that plus the expenses of your business. So just kind of keep that in mind. But it does build incrementally, and that is what's great about it too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So doing the profit is beneficial for just your overall business financial health, because you're in the background also building up that, as you call it, peace of mind fund. I call it sleep well at night fund. Same thing. But then at the same time, it's also not just energizing you to continue to do the work that you do and to show up and to grow, but also it's energizing your whole family because they have, like you said, stock in the company as well. And, you know, especially like if you're a person who's doing this on the side, who's trying to build it up, you know, to be a full-time gig, that means that you need to spend your evenings or your mornings before your day job working, you know, so that's like time away from family more than likely. And I'll say, like, if you're able to reward your family for that sacrifice, like that goes a long, long way, you know? So I see a lot of benefits to it. That's why I do it. If you aren't doing it, maybe consider doing it. I know that it's a little bit of like, oh, but I want to take all of it home now kind of thing. I totally get that. But as we teach all of our clients, or at least we should, that delayed gratification does serve you.
Absolutely. I do want to say just two more things. One of them's a statement, the other's a question, and then we can close up this conversation.
Sure.
The statement is, it can be anything whatever it is. So if you are only bringing home 1% and maybe you don't have a lot of clients, and so at the quarterly bonus time, you only have $50, it's okay. Take it out and find something to do with it. So if it's enough to take your whole family out to dinner, it depends on how size your family, because right now $50 won't feed our family of 6 out, but maybe it will feed your family out to dinner. If not, take them out for a coffee treat or an ice cream treat or something. So I want you to know, it doesn't have to be a lavish vacation. If you want, you can actually start saving up for that lavish vacation with that profit money. And as long as your family knows that that's what it's going towards. So that was the statement. The question, Cody, is what is your favorite thing that you've done with that profit in your family? Especially because you mentioned that sometimes they really look forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So me personally, my family, including my kids, we're all under the understanding that we are working for a larger purpose, which is really going to open things up in the future for us. So I don't take all of the profit on those quarterly and put it all towards the family. I take a portion of it, you know, like half and half kind of thing. So, you know, a big portion of that does go towards some of our family goals, which is, you know, the real estate endeavors that I've been going into, you know, to eventually have us retire early. You know, like I have this like grand master plan to be retired, and I'm using air quotes, by the time I'm 35, which basically means I can work whenever I want, wherever I want, and I don't need to work. It's because I want to, kind of thing. So that's a big goal. But as far as like what we've done for fun, we aren't really big on the like acquiring things. So like, you know, we're not like big on you know, buying a new car or, you know, whatever it might be, you know, or even like just going and like going on a shopping spree. Like we're not really into that. We're really big on experiences. So what we've done in the past is like a couple weekend trips. You know, we live in like the Great Lakes area. So, you know, we've gone up to like up north in Michigan, to do like Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, stuff like that. We also have this place in Ohio called Hocking Hills. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a park with like a bunch of caves and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. So, we've taken a couple weekend trips there and, just done that kind of thing and actually experienced or lived into the experience and made memories,
Yeah,
so that's
that's
the stuff that we like
incredible.
to do.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really like about your response is that it was balanced. So you
Hmm.
had a couple of things in there. Some of it was specifically the experiences with the kids and your wife, and some of it was a bigger family goal. The part I liked most about that latter part is that it was a family goal that they were absolutely aware of, and they know where that is leading. So I think that's a really, really great response. I
Yeah.
always love asking you these questions without prompting you ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even to just respond to that family goal, the reason it's a family goal and it's not like a selfish, like, hey, this is my goal kind of thing,
Yeah.
is because the whole family understands that the ultimate goal is not to buy houses;
Hmm.
it's to buy back our most valuable asset, which is our time.
Hmm.
So if we can free that up to where, like, hey, we actually don't need to work because our investments are working for us to cover everything and above that, then we can spend as much time together as we want,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
that's the bigger goal. So then we can actually go out and like have those experiences literally whenever, however, and how much we want,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about the difference in the similarities between time and money. And while there were many, many similarities, one of the biggest differences, in fact, the only one we really talked about, was that time is not a renewable resource, whereas money is.
Yes.
And you can't create the time, but you can create money. And so I think it's really interesting that that is where your family is and that they're like, yep, this is a priority and this is what we're going to work towards. So
Mhm.
congratulations on taking this and not just applying it to your business, but actually following through and applying it in your family as well. I think that's great.
Thanks.
You
Yep.
bet.
And you should do the same if you're listening.
Yes, if you're listening today, we encourage you to do the same. And if you have any questions about how this all kind of comes together, certainly feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to walk you through that. I know we did use a couple of examples today, but there's a lot of information and it's all kind of gobbledygook in your head probably. So we would be happy to unpack some of that for you personally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for listening in. Thank you again for all those every weekers out there. We are looking forward to hopping back with you next week for another jam-packed episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. Catch you then.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.